Good evening. Welcome to Continuous Improvement. This week, we're going to do an overview of Chapter 9, and this is week 11. So what's our agenda for this evening? Well, the first thing is to talk about what goes into this chapter of the template. There are count them, three things that you should be writing in this section. The first is standardization. The second is continuous improvement. And the third section is compliance. We're going to go over each of those, and then we're going to talk about what's going to be happening in the rest of the semester. So let's start out with standardization. What is standardization? Standardization is the methods that you use to make sure that the organization doesn't backslide from the sustainability improvements that you have instituted. So this is from, continuing on from your recommended improvements, the implementation plan, measuring the results. What is it that you need to do in order to make sure that these stay, that these stick? And there are a number of ways you can do this. And this does have overlap with continuous improvement. There are some things that you can use in each one, but these are the ones I'm going to cover for standardization. You can use an ongoing audit process. You can develop standard procedures and policies. You can develop procedural checklists, visual controls, layout changes, or a balanced scorecard. We're going to talk about each one of these. But remember, one of the things that I've talked to with a number of you is that what you want to try to do is what's called completed staff work. So if you are going to suggest some standard procedures, then you want to provide a draft of the standard procedures in an appendix. If you come up with checklists, then draft the checklists and have those in the appendix. So let's move on and talk about each one of these. One of the first things that you might consider is to write up some standard procedures or policies so that the people know that it's formal, they know that it's here to stay, and that anyone who's new that comes on will also receive that in the form of onboarding. They'll learn what the standard procedures are. This is an example of some of the standard procedures that you might consider. Things like developing an environmental policy, looking at the impacts and legal obligations that the company has, developing a plan with objectives and goals, what kind of measurement, monitoring and reporting that the organization is going to do, and then what kind of management review, along with the way to implement the changes to each one of these based on the management review. Now, you might also include a procedural checklist. This is so that in a few months, people don't remember exactly how to do the things that they were supposed to do. Well, then you have a procedural checklist that they can use. You might want to institute visual controls. These could be whether it's using the 5 S's. I know some of you have done Lean and Sustainable Six Sigma as part of your improvements. Well, if you're going to do that, then you ought to have some kind of visual controls so that people know what they need to continue doing. You might mark things on the table to make sure, on the table or on the floor, to make sure that you know what it is, or that they know what it is they're supposed to be doing, where they're supposed to be putting things. And you might have some reminders. Now, remember, if you have reminders like how much water that they should use, or how they should be turning off lights on the way out, remember that a lot of visual controls don't last longer than about 2 weeks. And so you want to make sure that you have a way of updating those on a regular basis, maybe having several cards that can be put on the sink. Don't make sure that you're not wasting water, make them all cute and memorable, because otherwise they just become part of the landscape. Any layout changes that you have, want to get those set up before you leave, hopefully. And you might set up something like a Sustainability Management Information System, an SMIS. Learned about that. That's also known as a balanced scorecard or measurement dashboard. Again, when you're doing something like this, what you want to make sure is that you can't just tell them, do a balanced scorecard. They won't know what it is. They won't know how to do it. But if you can set it up in Excel and provide them the file, and then have maybe a snippet of the file in the appendix with that you'll provide them with the file that is as complete as possible, so that all they have to do is put in whatever the monthly amount is, or whatever it is that they're measuring, and then it will automatically make the system work for you. This is one of the good reasons for using the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, because it will do a lot of that. All you have to do is put in the monthly information. You can do or recommend that they do an ongoing audit process. With that, you'll do a regular audit, create an action plan, do those actions, and then make sure that they actually have accomplished what they're supposed to do, and then come back and look at doing an audit again. Now, when you are doing this, remember from what we talked about before, these have to be realistic. You can't expect them to do monthly audits. You can't expect them to do quarterly audits. You might have them do a couple of audits and then maybe once a year, so that they know that it's part of their routine, but it's not so arduous that they're going to rebel. So that was the first section, which was standardization. Remember, that's all you're doing is keeping those things going that you've already instituted. The second part of the chapter is on continuous improvement. Those are what policies, procedures, processes that you're going to suggest that will help them continuously improve beyond the improvements that you have recommended. So here are a bunch of ideas. As I say, you can still use some of the ones from standardization as long as you have a different focus. But here are some of the other things, and we'll go over them all. Things like goal setting and empowering the employees, training, communication plans, systems thinking, sustainable Six Sigma, Lean, sustainable lean thinking, and customer and employee surveys. Those are some of the ways that you might use for continuous improvement. So one of the systematic ways of continuous improvement comes out of the book from Peter Senge called The Fifth Discipline. That's the name of the book. And it is to create a learning organization. And believe me, you'll want to go ahead and read there are a lot of short documents on the web, and we had some in our last class that talks about learning organizations, but this gives you an overview. There are 5 disciplines. There's the personal mastery, team learning, mental models, shared vision, and system thinking. I'm going to talk primarily about just a few of these, but you can see that if you have all of these kinds of things in place, that you will have a learning organization, and being a learning organization, it will experience continuous improvement. So let's take a look at personal mastery. Personal mastery is helping your employees by designing the job and training the people so that they can achieve personal mastery. So these are some of the components that go into this. Does the task that they have to do have value to them? Is it a meaningful job? Can they do it well? Are they competent? Can they make decisions within their purview, choice? And are they making a difference? What impact do they have? So one way of doing that is with setting goals. And you can use the SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And they can be tailored for the individual. Now, be careful with numeric goals, because a lot of times they're not really, like I'm going to reduce things by 10%, because you're not really sure whether it can be done or whether maybe it's even too easy. But you can make it specific on the kinds of things that they're going to do without having to make it a numerical goal. Now, empowering employees includes many of these ideas. You want to delegate a task to an employee in order to help develop them, but you have to be a little careful about that. You want to define the boundaries. You want to make sure they know what the mission is. You want to let go of it a little bit and decentralize the execution, make sure they have the resources, see what they do and give constructive feedback, accept ideas and inputs for making the whole process better, and then recognize employees for their hard work. I started with delegate to develop. First thing you have to do is communicate the vision. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And so all of these are steps to empowerment. Training is one of the ways that you can empower folks. And so you want to develop a training plan that makes sure that the folks, that the employees are competent, they are capable, that they know the mission, they know the boundaries, and they have all the resources and all the checklists that they need in order to do it. And training is an important aspect of it. Remember, I said that if you're going to do training, you may want to provide something like a sample training module, maybe have the whole training plan and say, and here's an example of how you would develop that training. PowerPoint slides, lesson plan, you've done all of these things. So you want to make sure that you put that in the appendix. Communications plan. So how are they going to communicate sustainability to their employees and to their customers? I know this is hard to read, but if you have a chance, go back and take a look at it. This is awesome. Happens to be one for Berkeley. And it has a lot of good ideas, including newsletters and Facebook page and forums and events and a lot of good things. And so, some of those you might find useful to include in your communication plan. And of course, you might do a customer or an employee survey. Again, you don't want to do it too often, maybe once a year, and ask how sustainability is going and what ideas they might have to improve. Make sure to provide sample questions in an appendix, and make sure that you also give them the tools they need in order to make sense of the surveys. And then there's systems thinking. Systems thinking is to make sure that you're taking a look at the whole picture, a holistic look at the picture, and not just applying Band-Aids to problems. And so you want to take a look at you want to make sure they know and that they are trained to look at all of the inputs, how the inputs are transformed into outputs, and what kind of a feedback system that you can put in place in order to let them know whether or not there are defects, whether there is waste, so that they can then essentially look at the whole system and create their own systems approach. Now, one of the ways that the learning organization does systems thinking is they take a look at a number of archetypes. And the tragedy of the commons is one of those archetypes. And it just shows, and there's, if you're interested in this, there's some good handouts on the internet that you can download, or you can ask me for them, to be able to take a look and see which archetypes make sense to use, like things like limits to growth, tragedy of the commons, and it talks about reinforcing loops, which can be positive reinforcing or they can be negative reinforcing, and then balancing loops, and both are needed. And you might decide to do Sustainable Six Sigma. These are the 7 total quality management tools that can be used. You don't have to use all of them, but you would want to at least explain which ones would be the most relevant and how they can find information on how to do that. Give them an example, give them as complete a staff work as you can do, so that they can do it themselves in the future. Okay, lean and green thinking is the lean. There's Six Sigma and there's lean, and there's Lean Six Sigma. So you can take a look at how you can add a green dimension to lean thinking. And a lot of what you do with that is make sure that they're looking at waste reduction. And these are examples of the 7 green wastes: energy, water, materials, garbage, transportation, emissions, and biodiversity. And you can set up a continuous improvement option or process, so that they can take a look at those in a realistic cycle. So that was the second part, continuous improvement. So we did standardization, and we have continuous improvement. Now we're going to address compliance again. And what you're doing in this part is to explain how the compliance might have changed as a result of your improvements. Sometimes you've made improvements in compliance. You've made it easier for them to comply. Other times you have to make sure that when they make the change out, like changing out fluorescent bulbs and putting in LEDs, that they know that they have to dispose of the fluorescent bulbs appropriately, because it's toxic waste. So, it may be that some of what you suggested, that you recommended, actually makes a new requirement for them to comply with something. So again, you want to take a look at regulatory and voluntary both. First thing you want to take a look at is what are requirements for all businesses, which might be environmental requirements, labor, health, safety, if they're importing or exporting, accounting practices, labor laws, and county code enforcement. Remember, what you're primarily looking at is what they still need to do or might need to do new as a result of your recommendations, and to also let them know when things are actually going to be easier. And so these are some of the areas that you might take a look at. There might be some industry-specific requirements like FDA or OSHA, or certain licenses that you might need to have an electrician come in to do some of the recommendations that they've adopted. And so you need to make sure that they know that. And so in addition to regulatory, you also must address voluntary certifications and accreditations. So again, there might be some new things or some ways that your project has made it easier for them to do the voluntary certification that you mentioned in Chapter 1, or there may be something additional or something different that you might want to suggest that might be part of a continuous improvement process that would include a voluntary certification. So you don't want to duplicate what's in chapter 1. You want to see what it is now that they could do to move forward, to do a little bit more. And so that could be a wide range of things, and those things that your improvements have improved, made it easier for them to get some voluntary certifications. And then make sure that they know whatever compliance that needs to be reported. You know, are there any risk items that need to be reported? I'm not going to go over this whole thing. You can look at it later if you're interested, to make sure that you are doing some of the things. There's the front office, and then there's the operations areas there. So there are legal compliance that you might need to do, technology, risk, and compliance. And so this is a regulatory compliance reporting scheme that you can take a look at and see if you've covered everything that you think they need to know that surrounds your project area. Okay, so we've talked about the 3 areas: standardization, continuous improvement, and compliance. So you're going to have 3 sections in your chapter addressing each one of those areas. So let's turn now to what's happening with the rest of the semester. What I want you to do this week is to go in and sign up or confirm where you want to, when you want to do your practice presentation, and when you want to do your final presentation, and then capstone lessons learned. So, upcoming assignments. We only have 2 more of these sessions. Next week, I'm going to cover the conclusion and the executive summary. And the following week, I'm going to give some presentation tips. We're doing a TED Talks type of conference presentation, not a book report. You'll hear that a lot during the presentation tips. So then the practice presentations, as what it looks like to me, is that most of them are going to be starting on the 20th of April. That's right after Easter. Easter is the 17th. So there was one team, the Sunday night team. I don't want to do it on Easter. I don't think you want to do it on Easter. So we'll do that on the 24th. But the rest of you, it's probably the Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and then Sunday there. Final presentations are on the 29th. So that's right around the corner, just a little bit more than a month away. And then on the 2nd, which is that last Monday, week 8 of Mod 2, week 16 of the capstone course, at 6 p.m., we have the capstone lessons learned. I know how much you all appreciated hearing from capstone students what they learned in terms of what to do and what not to do. And so I want you to pass those along to the current class that will be then doing their capstone in the fall. So please, as many of you as possible, plan on coming in Monday, the 2nd of May at 6 p.m. for the first hour. We're also, for those of you who are graduating, we have a little graduation celebration. If you want to actually come into the sustainability lab, that would be awesome. We'll have food. Let me know so I know how much to get, but that should be fun. Now, that same evening, the final paper is due. Again, it's a bit of a soft due date, but I really need to have, I have like 150 pages or 150 papers that come in the final week. So I do need a couple of days to take a look at it. And hopefully you will have your final paper finished before you come to the capstone lessons learned. So keep that in mind as you're going through it. Now, I know that there are some of you, for very good reasons, who are not going to quite meet this timeline. We'll talk about it. We'll figure out what kind of a timeline you can meet. And if you even need to go a few weeks longer in order to get it done and get it done well, then we can do that. And you'll still be able to graduate. They just won't mail your diploma until you clear up any incompletes that you may have. But it's not a problem that always happens with 2 or 3 people. So that's the upcoming assignments. You recognize this. There is a slide there that says practice presentations on it. Right now, it only has Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in those days. This does not have to be the time that you do it. This happens to be the time that you're currently meeting. Normally, well, pre-COVID, we would make you come in to the sustainability lab unless you were not co-located, just because it really is helpful to see how the slides look on the screen, because it's different from the way they look on your computer. And so it's very helpful. But I understand it really can't be done. And I right now, and a lot of you are working. So we will probably end up being fairly similar in our schedule and do it via Zoom. If anybody wants to come in person, then by all means, please do. Let me know, and let me know when I have to be there. So we'll look at that. Okay, let me see. There's anything else I was going to say with that? No, but this is, oh, it doesn't show up. This is the final presentations day, which is the April 29th. And when you go into the slides, you will sign up. Please put the title of your presentation, your name and the title. If there's a team, the names and the title. Please make it a spiffy title. Don't make it waste audit on a restaurant or something like that. Make it something that you would use in a conference presentation. Try to come up with something that captures it, but is clever, that will bring people in to watch your presentation. So you will sign up for that. Now, it is a requirement for you to present in person unless you live more than 250 miles away. That is a requirement of the College of Business. So let me know if that's not going to be possible. But as it stands now, as far as I know, that is still a requirement. So I would like to have as many people as possible kind of grouped together. So try to have maybe a group in the morning and a group in the afternoon so that you can watch each other's presentations. Obviously, those of you who are in Rhode Island or Connecticut or wherever it is that you are, or other places, you're going to be doing yours via Zoom. The rest of the folks, it is an expectation of the College of Business that you will take a vacation day to come in for this. If that's not possible, talk to me, but that is the expectation of the College of Business. So that's where we stand right now with that. Please go in and you go over here. You can click on this in the slides and go there and sign up for it. And so please do that, or I will track you down during the week and ask you to sign up. So as always, if you have any questions, please email me. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the semester. We're getting there. We are getting there. So give a little congratulations in advance, and we will have a celebration in a little bit more than a month. So have a good evening. Have a good rest of your week.